Hi, everybody. Brian Norcross here with a midday Saturday update on our tropical situation here. Tropical Depression 9 has formed south of the Bahamas, just north of the coast of Cuba, and it is forecast to move up paralleling the Florida coast just offshore. And then it becomes a big problem for the Carolinas, maybe Georgia, maybe up into Virginia, and we'll look at all of that. Let's take a look at where it is right now. Here's the 11 a.m. Eastern Time advisory, 35-mile-an-hour winds, moving northwest at 6, so just estimated to be going like that very slowly, and there was the pressure. NOAA hurricane hunters were out there this morning to check it out and found it had enough of a circulation that they went ahead and designated it a tropical depression. That's what a depression means. It means there is a circulation, but there aren't strong enough winds yet to call it a tropical storm. That is expected to happen by tomorrow. Now, take a look at the visible satellite picture. This is like a photograph from space, and we're just seeing some turning right in there. That's where they located the circulation. But look, it's a large area, a general area of circulation, but because the islands and the mountains in Cuba are affecting it, it's still quite disorganized. It has to pull away from that before it has a chance at organization. And looking ahead, the weather pattern, the atmospheric pattern looks conducive for it to strengthen into a tropical storm and then eventually into a hurricane. So here's the forecast from the National Hurricane Center as of 11 a.m. Eastern Time. You see the idea is it is a tropical storm by tomorrow morning, and then by tomorrow afternoon, strengthening as it moves through the central and northern Bahamas. The northern Bahamas, including Nassau, the Abacos, Grand Bahama Island, and so forth, Freeport, the towns that you know there. So they should be ready for a tropical storm. There's no chance this is going to be a Hurricane Dorian situation where it sits over the islands as a fierce hurricane. But use common sense. Boating will be dangerous. South Florida, boating will be dangerous on Sunday when the storm is in the vicinity. May have on the southeast coast some gusts up near tropical storm strength. It just depends on where the system tracks. If it tracks down the left side of the cone, obviously closer to the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area. If it tracks farther offshore, then less wind, but still dangerous boating conditions. All right, then it moves north, and now strengthening into a strong tropical storm, maybe a hurricane somewhere here off the central Florida coast. And because the system is strengthening, the idea is if it comes kind of the left side of the cone here, it's going to come close enough to the coast. So they have a tropical storm watch from the Palm Beaches on up to just north of the Daytona Beach area, including the Space Coast and the Treasure Coast, for fringe effects, especially right along the coast. Just be aware again, no boating and so forth as this storm is in the area. That would be dangerous. And then as we're here we are Monday evening, kind of a beam of Daytona Beach, more or less, heading up towards St. Augustine. Then we get into the difficult part of the forecast, because the Hurricane Center forecast calls for the system to take this hard right, but there are a lot of possibilities here. I'm going to show you what's driving this and what those possibilities are in more detail in a moment. But yes, it could come up to the coast and go like this and sit along the coast for a couple, 3 days, producing tremendous rain in the coastal plain there, in the low country and the Piedmont, and on up into the Midlands of the Carolinas. Or it could swing up in here. There's still forecasts that bring it ashore, as I'll show you here in just 1 second. So big question marks here, but in any case, impacts look certain from, let's say, southeast Georgia on through the Carolinas, up into Virginia, and then maybe into the mountains. That's somewhat of a question at this point, but certainly a good part of those areas, because this storm is forecast to last. So notice it's forecast to be a hurricane in this general area here, and then as it moves out, and the question is how quickly is it going to move out? Hurricane Center saying it's going to move very slowly, maybe even loop in this area for a few days, but not all the models agree on that. Some take it out to sea pretty quickly, but some bring it right ashore, and I'll show you what the issues are there. Look right here. This is now on Tuesday, so now we're in that time where the weather pattern is very uncertain. What are the factors here? We have all these different factors. First of all, high pressure over the Atlantic. So the high is driving things like this, driving the hurricane well offshore. Umberto, I haven't talked about that. The big powerful hurricane well offshore is going to be a factor. It does not look like it's going to make a direct impact on land, but it could affect Bermuda. And the circulation around that hurricane is like this, right? So you have these two factors going on. One is high pressure is kind of going this way, and it's helping drive what will be Imelda to the north, but then this hurricane is eroding that high pressure by pushing back the other way. So that's one factor. Over the southeast, you have low pressure. That's what's causing the rain there today. Already it's raining, and it's been raining over the southeast, so the soil is saturated, which doesn't help this situation at all. In fact, it makes it significantly worse than it would be if that weren't a factor, if it were just the tropical storm moving in. But that's trying to drive the system that way. So if this ends up winning the battle of the steering, that's going to bring the hurricane ashore somewhere around South Carolina, North Carolina, or Georgia, somewhere in that area. However, there's another big player, and that's up here. That's this dip in the jet stream. This thing is going to be very strong, and eventually it's going to kind of dip down and yank on these systems, and it's what's going to take Umberto on up to the north. The question is exactly where is Imelda going to be, and is it going to get caught in that very strong flow going that way, or in this weak flow pulling it inland where it would stall inland? The distance between all these systems is very, very critical, and it's kind of on a knife's edge on exactly which one is going to influence it more. So those are the factors. So right now the odds are high that it moves to those a beam of Jacksonville, south of Charleston, somewhere in that area over the ocean, and slows down. Whether it comes ashore or not, it looks like it's going to slow down in any case. If it may slow down and stall or loop or something and then move out to sea, as you'll see those possibilities here in just one moment. All right, let's go day by day here and look at this. So here we have today Category 4 Hurricane Umberto out there, and right now here's our tropical depression, and there's enough distance between them, and Umberto is not a big enough system yet that the one is influencing the other. In this case, it would be Umberto influencing the depression, but they're too far apart at this point. Here you see already moisture from that upper level low in the Carolinas and on up into Virginia. So this is just moistening the situation ahead of the storm. We're also seeing some tropical moisture flowing north. Again, this is all kind of around that high. Remember the high pressure system offshore out here? This is just the circulation. You can see it around the high like that. So that's driving tropical moisture up into the southeast. Okay, let's go. Here we go. And watching the upper left here, this is the time. Going forward, becomes a tropical storm. Now it's Imelda tomorrow on the forecast, and this is the National Hurricane Center forecast and the European model. And what you see here is tomorrow we have this flow into Florida. It doesn't look especially dangerous, but could be disruptive weather in South Florida. So no boating over the weekend here in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, up in the Palm Beaches, especially offshore as the storm is nearby. Of course, same situation in the Bahamas, and some very gusty winds in the Bahamas, and maybe a little bit on the southeast coast, depending on the exact track. You can see the storm is not very far offshore, and we're getting this onshore flow here into central Florida, and that's why they have the tropical storm watch up, meaning the possibility of winds over 40 miles an hour. Okay, so this is Sunday, And notice that the rainfall and the moisture up here from that low that was over the southeast is diminishing, and now the tropical moisture from the storm is beginning to move in. All right, here we go forward. That's Sunday. Here's Monday. Now the tropical moisture related to the depression, or at that time tropical storm, is beginning to push in over the low country from southeastern Georgia on up to the tidewater of Virginia, including eastern North Carolina, thinking that's going to be the situation on Monday. And here we have this Category 4 hurricane out there that's growing in size and edging closer to the tropical storm. So as it gets bigger, it's going to try and put steering flow like that, but not quite yet on Monday. And then we go to Tuesday, and watch, it eases up offshore. The thinking is becomes a hurricane somewhere in there. And now we get these two systems pretty close. This one is bigger. It's a little different here than the model, because the Hurricane Center uses a compromise between multiple models, and we're farther out into the future, so we get a little more disparity in the models. But there's the Hurricane Center's forecast. There is the European Center's model forecast. But in any case, the systems are close enough now that we're starting to get this effort by the hurricane to slow down the tropical storm here. And this low that was up in here is just having less and less influence on the situation. There's also a front in here, by the way. So you have all these different weather factors, but then we have this extreme moisture now over a good part of the southeast, including the mountain areas in North Carolina. So we're just going to be ready beginning on Tuesday for significant rainfall there from Virginia over to southern West Virginia into eastern Tennessee and all over the Carolinas and eastern Georgia. All right, then we get into this very unknown time, because how all those systems are going to influence each other. Here's what the models show us, and you can see the uncertainty here. So this is the GFS. Notice a number of them go inland, but a number of them turn right at some point here and go out to sea. So we have this split opinion. All right, that's the GFS. Now let's look at the European. Very similar. A number go inland and stall it up here over the Carolinas or Georgia or somewhere like that. Just have this long period of moisture enhanced by this dying storm there. Or it comes up and hangs a hard right at some point. And this is if that dip in the jet stream really grabs it and grabs Umberto and moves it out sooner. And that's a stronger dip than forecast. That's the thing. We're going by the forecast here. So if that extremely strong dip in the jet stream comes in, it's going to yank this system out to sea behind Umberto and kind of clear things out. You also see in here some turning kind of systems where it just plain old stalls. All right, then the Google AI model, same idea. Some come up, come in here, system dies out and stalls. Some come up to about here, maybe a beam of St. Augustine or Jacksonville, and then bang, out to sea as this dip comes in. So we use this kind of system to understand the odds of different things happening. You can see, I think, by the number of lines that there's a significant chance that this thing will make landfall based on what we know now, but maybe a little higher odds that it doesn't, that it stalls for a while and then zooms out to sea. So this is just through Tuesday. Now, if we look at our tropical threat graphic, which is based on this same data, by the way, you see that the possibilities show up very clearly here. Yes, there's a reasonable possibility. First of all, there's a high possibility, high odds, that it's in this area here, gets up near the coast. And then there's lower odds that it goes inland, and there's also about the same odds that it goes off that way. So we have this very much a fork in the road coming along that depends on exactly how close that Umberto gets, and also that big dip in the jet stream, and remember that low over here and how quickly it weakens and is just not part of the picture. So bottom line is everybody in the southeast needs to be ready for issues with this storm. heavy rain, potential flooding, where if it has flooded before, this is that kind of situation. Be ready for that. And also, we may very well get storm surge and coastal issues as well, and all the other hazards that go with the hurricane if it continues apace. So a lot of it has to do with how quickly it moves up past Florida. So that's where we stand this morning. We'll be back with you here this afternoon and give you the latest update at that time. All right. Have a good day, everybody, and stay informed if you're in Florida or especially in the Southeast. Take care.